Hey, congratulations. You did it. You're awesome. It's a huge accomplishment to make it all the way to the end of one of these long form video courses. And so it's a huge accomplishment, a feather in your cap. Congratulations. Whenever I look at the views for a course that I've created, typically see the first two or three videos have an enormous number of views, and then it starts to drop off rapidly from there. And I used to be concerned about that, but the good folks in Microsoft Virtual Academy assured me that that happens with every course. And I believe that everybody has the best of intention to follow through and see something to the end, but then life gets in the way. And there's distractions and changes in priority that will interrupt even the best of intentions and completely halt progress. But that's not you. You are able to push it all the way to the end, and now you're well on your way to mastering Visual Basic, or at least learning more about Visual Basic from this point. Maybe it's learning more about .NET in general, or picking a user interface technology, whether it be for web or Windows applications, learning how to access data from databases using .NET's data access APIs and more. And I have a pretty strong feeling that before long you'll be ready to build your own applications, whether for yourself or for a company that you work for. But whatever the case might be, congratulations, you earned it. But let me encourage you to not stop there. Keep pushing forward. You have the momentum. Keep taking daily baby steps. Daily progress, no matter how insignificant it might seem, is how you make real improvements in your life and how you add skills in your skill set. There's a little sign that I have in my closet over here. It just reminds me of this fact. It says, "What you do every day matters more than what you do once in a while." So please take that to heart and just make sure every day you get your hands dirty in the code and you write some code every single day. But this was a great first step. You've taken a great step in the right direction, and I'm proud of you, and you did a great job. So in this last video lesson, I want to wrap up the series and provide a few suggestions about really what the next logical steps for you are as you learn more about .NET from this point on. So I want to assure you that some of the ideas that I presented in this course, especially the more advanced concepts that I hinted at or I briefly discussed, like object-oriented programming, working with collections, LINQ, some of those sorts of things, they could require weeks or months of thought work before your mind is really able to truly digest them. I know I personally spent many hours just staring at the wall, thinking about something that I'm trying to wrap my head around. The mind needs quiet time to reflect, and you need to put yourself in a position to succeed by giving your mind time to discover, to ask the right questions, to allow those little neurons to make those vital connections inside of your noggin. So honestly, there are things that I learned about 10 years ago that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. That's the nature of this business and the complexity of software development. It's easy and it's as hard as you want it to be. So many times I often find myself needing to read many different blogs and books and watch many different videos and see what they have to say about a given topic before it really starts to finally resonate with me. I like to hear it from many different authors, not just one. How I can use a particular technology, how I can apply that technology. Each author talks or writes about a given topic, saying things in a slightly different way, and sometimes that finally unlocks the idea for me in my mind. But ultimately, I hope you realize that you don't really need to know every single thing there is to know about Visual Basic or about programming or .NET in order to be productive today, right now. You don't have to be an expert first to write software and to do something meaningful. I mean, many of the websites and the applications that you see that were, you hear the stories about kids starting these in college, whether it be Facebook or something else. They didn't have all the skills they needed before they started off. They acquired those skills as they went along. So I encourage you to do the same sort of thing. In fact, some concepts may only make sense to you after you have more experience, after you've made some mistakes. And a good example of that's object-oriented programming. You really never know how useful that becomes until you've seen one or two or three projects collapse under their own weight, and you think, there's got to be a better way. I've been approaching this all wrong. So at this point, you have a good basic knowledge of Visual Basic, the programming language, but there's still a lot of opportunity to practice and to grow from here. So no matter what type of applications that you'll probably wind up building, there are other few fundamental ideas that you really need to become familiar with to be productive as a software developer. First of all, you're probably going to want to learn how to work with relational databases like SQL Server. You should learn how to access data that's been stored in a database, how to add or create tables and rows to those tables, how to design tables correctly. You'll also want to learn some of the visual tools that are available to you in Visual Studio that can help you to drag and drop and configure your settings and selections for your data access and your database. And then you're going to want to quickly grow past that and rely less on the visual designers, both for user interfaces, for databases, for the data access, and grow past that and rely less on the visual designers in Visual Studio. However, those are a great crutch as you're getting started. The next thing that you're going to want to do is choose a presentation technology to master. So you have no lack of options, fortunately or unfortunately, depending how you look at it, including ASP.NET Web Forms and ASP.NET MVC. Core MVC, the latest version of that framework for building web applications. Then on the desktop side, there are Windows Forms, which is an older technology, and then there's WPF, which is a newer technology. Of course, you could learn the Universal Windows Platform, which is the newest API for building Windows Store applications. And then there's also tools that are available to you that allow you to write Visual Basic or C# and create applications for many different platforms, like Xamarin, for example, to create cross-platform apps that will run on iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. If you're not sure, let me suggest that at the very least, in my opinion, you should learn HTML and CSS and JavaScript. In the past, those have traditionally been considered web technologies. However, I think you're going to see increasingly that there is this convergence between those two things, where you can write web apps that can be compiled into mobile apps, or you can write HTML that can be used as desktop applications. So I would encourage you, even if you don't plan on doing formal web development for a career, you still need to know the lingua franca of the internet, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I've created several fundamental series on Microsoft's Channel 9, and I believe they're also available on Microsoft Virtual Academy for each of those topics, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, and so on. And then I recommend you learn, you get deeper into how to build applications the right way. And so you look at topics related to application architecture, particularly how do you format or how do you separate the concerns of your application, splitting up your code into layers of responsibility, and why you would even want to do something like that. When you take the time to learn how to architect your applications correctly, you're hoping to split up your code into logical layers of responsibility that will help you withstand the impact of change on the software system. So change can come from many different places as you're building software, whether it be from changing business requirements, changes in technology, changes from defects in software and required bug fixes and so on. But in each case, you can mitigate the impact of change, of making changes in your software, in your code, by encapsulating responsibilities behind well-established APIs. It's just a next step beyond some of the things that we talked about regarding encapsulation earlier in this course. I spend a lot of time thinking and talking about that on my own website. Oh, there it is right there, DevU. And so I'll have a last plug for that here in just a moment. But from application architecture, you're going to want to learn more about basic software design patterns and tactics and techniques. And so I'm going to give you a list of keywords that you're probably going to want to jot down and add to your to-do list. And frankly, each of these could spawn a whole book or video series. And I've already alluded to object-oriented programming. That's the biggie. There's also object-oriented analysis and design. Obviously, those two go hand in hand. And if you can just get your mind wrapped around that first, that's a huge step in the right direction. But beyond that, you're going to want to learn about the principles and patterns that guide you towards writing code in an object-oriented fashion. So there's a set of principles known by the acronym SOLID, S-O-L-I-D, which are a set of 5 principles that help you realize the promise of object-oriented programming in your applications. You're also going to want to learn about workflows. So specifically, you're going to want to learn about working in a team environment with other software developers, sharing code, using a source code repository, using a tool called Git or Visual Studio Online. I think they call it Visual Studio Team Services now. You're definitely going to want to learn about unit tests, building unit tests. These are tiny little code-based tests that are continually testing your code to make sure that what you wrote today, a month from now, is still working as you make changes to your code. And some people have even gone as far to say that you should be writing those tests first before you actually write the production code to satisfy those tests. That's called test-driven development, or TDD. You'll see it, that acronym sometimes. You're going to want to learn about agile project management, agile software development techniques, defining requirements in something called user stories, playing planning poker in order to determine the amount of effort required for given tasks in a software iteration, all right, using agile boards to manage tasks between software developers, Kanban boards, Kanban boards. And you're going to want to learn about the nature of iterative development. You want to learn about developing a spike of functionality all the way through the layers of the system, an architectural spike that will then help all the members of your team understand more about the intended architecture, and so that you can all speak the same language as you're beginning to work on a project together. So I've given you probably a couple of dozen terms there that you could probably spend a year or two just looking up those and learning more about them. And fortunately, you don't have to know it all to get started. It's only in the last few years that I've even learned some of those terms, and I've been doing this for about 20 years now. So unfortunately, there's so much to learn, there's so little time, and you just have to decide to either go deep or go broad. My advice to you is to go deep and learn as much as you can about one single platform and be an expert in that platform. And Microsoft's a pretty safe bet because they've been around for a while. They're continually tearing apart and rebuilding their frameworks to keep them modern and relevant. And they have so many desktop installs. Their server technology, their cloud-based technology, their web-based technologies, they're all state-of-the-art. So again, if you want to bet your career on Microsoft, that's a pretty safe bet. Now, again, so much to learn, so little time. It's a challenge for everybody. You have to really commit and make your full-time job the job of learning. I've had friends at Microsoft who have confided in me that it's a challenge for them, just like everybody else. Nobody just knows all of this stuff automatically because it keeps evolving and new ideas keep being thrown into the arena of ideas. But this is what makes software development so fun and so challenging. Also a little daunting, but at least you'll never get bored as a software developer. You might get burnt out, but you won't get bored. And there's a bunch of great resources on the internet, not the least of which is Microsoft Virtual Academy, also Channel 9, great place to learn as well. However, let me make one final plug. If you're ever interested in learning about C# and more about .NET, more about architectural topics for software developers, more about web-based development, then you'll definitely want to check out my website, Developer University, at http://devu.com. That's designed specifically towards somebody who's a beginner, helping them get up and running as fast as possible. I spend a lot of time pointing out what I feel are the most important topics, the key ideas that you need to master, including homework exercises, interaction with me via Q&A, and even I have a live service where we can chat a couple times a week over GoToWebinar. And so check it out when you have a chance. So as I close, I hope you found this course to be valuable. If there's anything that I can do to help you out, let me know. I'll try. But most of all, I wish you great success in your career. Good luck, and thank you for watching.